All right. So good morning, everybody. Today is Friday, July 19th, which definitely means we're on the other side of the year and heading our way down. And so it's just like, wow, when July is over, we got 5 months left to Christmas. So, wow. So, all right, today, a theme this week has been kind of domestic violence and abuse and physical abuse. And so that's what we're going to tackle today. I would like for us to tackle it from the perspective of how do we help our clients? What do we hear from our clients in these areas? And then how do we help our clients navigate this kind of through therapy? And what does that look like? And so I'll go first with kind of how it shows, how I see it showing up in the therapy room. And so, and a caveat is I've actually spent like my whole internship year, even though that was a while ago, working specifically with domestic violence offenders. And so I feel very passionately about that work and actually about those people because usually most of the time, I'm not going to say all the time, but a lot of the times it is people who grew up in maladaptive families and don't have the skills to get the relationship they want. So it's like, how do I make this person do what I want? And unfortunately, some human beings, you will want to hit them or shake them to make this person do what we want to do. And so I do want to just say, being in that place, and I want all of us to be in that place of having compassion for both people. So the abuser and the victim, that they're both trying to get their needs met. And we as clinicians are trying our best to try to help them figure out how to get their needs met. I will also say that there is probably a little division in the field of if you have a couple that's in like a domestic violence situation, do you need to do the couples counseling or do you not do the couples counseling? Because sometimes couples counseling can hurt. And I think we take it on a case by case basis. There are some situations where definitely, nope, you guys need to go do individual work on the domestic violence first because therapy is only going to hurt. It'll fuel the fire. It'll give you more things to fight about because you don't have the skills to handle them or to self-soothe. But there are also some situations and some couples where it is domestic violence, but it's also just a very high conflict couple. And so they can handle counseling a little bit more so we can kind of get some work done. And so, and I'll say those are kind of more extreme cases. The cases that I think that I've seen the most as a sex therapist working in the sex therapy field is just been kind of in arguments that go a little bit too far and somebody gets like pushed to shove, but it's not like a consistent occurrence. And usually that's the thing that brings them into therapy. Like, because we went too far, we really need help. Also, we have a lot of partners kind of talking about when and how a sexual approach is okay. And when a approach can feel like not okay and not unsafe. I mean, not, I'm sorry, can feel not okay and unsafe with those words. And so helping couples navigate their words and signals and language and around sex. So if I touch you here, that's a request for sex. If I touch you here, this is a request for a hug. Oh, well, I didn't know that. And a lot of couples don't sit down and have those conversations. Like, what does this mean? And what does this mean? Is it okay if I approach you for sex at this time? Is it okay if I approach you for sex in this way? Okay, no, because when you do that for me, that doesn't feel like you're approaching me for sex. That feels like abuse. And I think that could be like a lot of, and it's usually more, I usually hear it more for male for female. So not to just stereotype, but that's just usually what we hear is like a lot of females will say, like, don't grope me, like, don't grab my breast. That's not a way to start sex. Like you can't just come up out of nowhere and hit my clit. Like I remember one client was like, my clit is not a push start. Like you just can't. Okay, so I'm still sick and I can't laugh without coughing. But just kind of just like making sure we're talking about what's the best way to approach, and like the couples are having these conversations. And I usually it's like, but I used to be able to approach you all the time when we were dating. Yeah, yeah, that may have been true. But as relationships evolve, conversations have to happen. So, okay, that's my spiel. So, who wants to dive in and go with what they've been seeing and any tips that they have for their couples?
I can go. So one, I think like this topic is so important for a variety of reasons, and it's not just because abuse may be present in your relationship with you not knowing it, because I think a lot of times there's some socialization of approaches that are more mainstream but can be considered abuse. So being able to check in with your partner and trying to be as non-judgmental and as less reactive as possible of like, do you feel safe? Like if you do not feel safe in the relationship, intimacy is going to suffer because we are literally at our most vulnerable when we're naked. Like we and if we do not feel safe, we are not going to have the intimate encounter that you're wanting, even if we had it previously, even if things had gone differently at different time. Like we have to realize that behavior builds change and exposure builds change and experiences bring change. And so being really aware and checking in with your partner of like, hey, is this still okay, or was it ever okay? How would you like me to approach you? What things are off limits, or should I just not do anymore? Or if we're, sometimes the person who initiates in a fashion that can end up feeling abusive, in that, oh, well, we're in bed and we're just feeling around. Like, yeah, maybe I don't want to do that. And now I feel like I can't come to bed, or I feel like I can't stay in bed with you, or I don't want to sleep in the same bed with you
Yeah.
because I can't trust you to keep your hands to yourself. Um, and so it's being very aware of that can be a form of abuse, and abuse can be happening without it being hitting, slapping. Like there can be emotional abuse, there can be psychological abuse.
Yeah.
And so being very aware that you don't need bruises to have abuse.
Yeah, you don't. Okay, you guys, I'm having a technical difficulty. I need to pause you for just a moment. Okay, we're back. I'm sorry about that. All right, thank you so much, Jessica, for that. All right, who wants to jump in next?
I'll go.
Okay.
So I feel like I have seen a lot of times I have clients who come in and describe certain incidents that happen in the beginning of the relationship, to where now they're seeing that it was kind of some early signs, but they
Mhm.
never really spoke about it. Maybe because that relationship gave them something that they were looking for, or something that other relationships didn't, to where they weren't really true to a certain need they needed met. So
Mhm.
their partner continues to do certain things, and there's this tension that is built, because like you're pressing a button that I gave you grace for, but now it's really not what I need as I start digging into what I really want. So
Yeah.
now there's that tension that's building. And in a cycle of abuse, that's the first sign when tension is built. So when your partner really knows, kind of like there's a push off here, there's some hesitation. And if someone can't articulate or communicate with their partner, then we fall into we're creating some type of physical or emotional, like Jessica Bernard talked about. Sometimes there's financial abuse as well, to where someone's the sole breadwinner and they hold that in front of you. Sometimes it's sexual abuse, even in relationships when consent is not given and you feel like you're entitled to do certain things because this is your partner, or this is your husband, or this is your wife, where you use that and take advantage of that and start pushing buttons that doesn't need to be pushed without the other person's consent. So they try to
Yeah.
gain some type of control over a situation, to where you never spoke about it before, and
Mhm.
now there's issues now. So when that incident happens, then it might be some pushback, there might be some reconciliation because this never happened before, and you
Yeah.
start thinking about all other good traits. And then there's a certain calm that happens, to where everything's fine, maybe better than it was before. But then when those things kind of die down, that tension builds again.
Yeah.
So with clients, we have to know that we don't have to wait for a big moment to call that abuse. And a lot of times when
Mm,
you're able to take hold of it, don't let the straw that broke the camel's back be the last straw. Because sometimes you don't get a choice to what that might be.
yeah. Yeah.
So kind of gaining control over situations and not thinking like small incidents, it'll just blow over. It's nothing. Everything counts. Every interaction counts. And you guys are building a foundation. So let's start the conversation now so we won't fall into that cycle.
Yeah. That's an excellent point. Excellent point. Okay. Who's next? What do you want to jump in and say?
I'll go. I'll talk about like couples that I've seen in therapy where one of the partners experienced some form of abuse in a prior relationship, and it's something that they haven't processed yet. And so then that's like, it's something that, as we kind of mentioned too, like people feel hesitant to label as abuse because it's not as clear cut. Yeah, bruises don't just mean the only form of abuse that you can see. And so people feel that, and yet they also feel like hesitancy still to talk about it because there's still so much emotion
Mm,
wrapped up in the past interaction,
yeah.
and kind of like bringing it up in therapy and then kind of realizing that there is more there to be processed. And my advice to like couples experiencing that is to be patient with your partner as they uncover it.
Mhm.
It's not something that, like in a lot of instances, they intentionally kept from you. It's something
Right.
that they're also keeping from themselves. Like I had one client where her partner, I was just seeing her individually, and her partner was upset that he wasn't talking to her, or she wasn't talking to him about,
Right.
like what she experienced and like what was going on, when really for her it was about her just understanding it herself first before she could talk to him about it. And so, really, just giving each other grace when it comes to even just processing past abuse and
Mhm.
how you're realizing how it affects you now, and like what your triggers are now and what escalates you now. And that's its own process that sometimes needs to happen, like apart from your partner. And that's okay. It's okay for that to happen apart and then to come back together and say, okay, I've done some digging, I've done some processing. This is really what's going on now.
Yeah, definitely so. Thank you so much. That was a really good point. All right. Tosh, you're the last one. Anything that you wanted to jump in and say?
Yes. So abuse is such a complicated topic,
It
right?
is.
I agree with what all of you have said, and all four of you had something different to say. And that's just
Mhm.
a
Mhm.
show of how complicated it is. And so I like to bring things down to as base level as possible sometimes so that the clients can fully understand what's happening, why it's happening, and then how do we rectify it? How do we get back to a healthier relationship? And so even though um my preferred therapy model is narrative therapy, or solution focused narrative therapy, I kind of go into a CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, model when I'm dealing with high conflict or abusive clients.
Mhm.
And I talk about how we'll receive stimuli, and then our brain goes into our either fight or flight mode. We'll react before it even is received in our prefrontal cortex, where we do our higher level processing, where we can actually think about what we're
Look at
doing
that.
and
Yeah.
understand what we're doing. And so I'm like, just normalizing that, like, okay, you went into fight mode before you even thought about it.
Yeah.
You're fighting your partner.
Yeah.
Before you even realize you're fighting your partner, you're hurting your partner, you're hurting someone that you love, that you care about.
Yeah.
And we have to get to a place where you take pause after you've received that stimuli. Your brain went into fight mode, but you are in control of your actions. So take pause.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens in that space will be the big change in your relationship, will make the biggest difference in your relationship and with yourself. Because I'm pretty sure you feel a bit of shame after you have hurt someone
Mm-hmm.
that you love, right? And so I think that's where the change happens. And so I kind of focus on that. Um, in the beginning, I'm just like, as soon as you feel yourself getting overly frustrated, walk away and take 20 minutes. Got that from John Gottman. Thank you, Mary Hannah, for teaching Gottman's 7 steps every single week on Meetup. Love that. But yeah, I'm helping my clients, my high conflict clients, to gain control of that space in between stimuli and response by walking away for 20 minutes and seeing what happens in the in between. And then come
Mhm.
back to therapy the next week. Let's talk about what happened in that in between. How did
Mhm.
your argument change? How did the response
Yeah.
from your argument change? I like to deal with that first because, like Jessica Renard said, the intimacy definitely suffers.
Yeah.
And so as a sex therapist, I really can't do the work with y'all in sex because there's
Mhm.
abuse. So
Yeah.
acknowledge that there's abuse. Let's talk about the abuse. And then once we get to a place where both partners feel safe, yeah, we can talk about sex.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's my thoughts.
All right, I want to hit on a dynamic that isn't quite abuse, but it can be abusive. And it's when a couple gets into a power struggle over sex. Well, I'm not going to have sex with you. Well, you're going to have sex with me. And so that is, it's on a line there. And it's just so dangerous because what I would like sex to be is this wonderful thing that you guys do together in partnership. And so if it turns into a power struggle of what you're gonna do for me, or you better do for me, or I'm gonna get my needs met and I'm not gonna meet your needs, and it becomes this terrible power struggle, it just becomes, I'm gonna say borderline abusive. And so if you guys would, if you can notice when you're in a power struggle, notice where either your pushiness is coming from or your holding back is coming from. Because one person is probably pushing, the other person's holding back. If y'all can take a break, and Taj, perfect, thank you. Off of Mary Hannah's Gottman work of that 20 minutes and say, okay, what am I doing here? Is this going to hurt us in the long run? Because if we keep having these incidents where sex is wrought with just struggle and pain and power struggle and it's a fight, like that's not going to set you up for a great sex life, you know? And so we have to have more positives than negatives. But if every sexual experience becomes this, you better give it to me because you know I need it, and you this is what you signed up for, or you can't have it from me, you can't make me, it's gonna hurt the relationship for the long haul. And sometimes those hurts, those um, little cuts can take years to repair, can take professional help to repair. And a lot of people, I think even as therapists, sometimes we struggle, like we do this for a living and we still struggle, like, okay, what do I need to do to help this couple repair? And so I know couples can't do it by themselves a lot of times, is to do those repairs. So let's work not to create the injuries and to make sure we're working on partnership. And I'd love if you guys, couples, could say, okay, if sex isn't feeling right for both of us, we're going to take a step back. Like we're going to take a step back and come back in the morning, in the afternoon, the next day, on this weekend, after maybe we've had a time to talk, to say, okay, what's going on? You're pulling against me, you're pushing against me, you're whatever. The dynamic is off. So okay, thank you. That's what else came up for me. Just those power struggles. Because I don't think people would identify them as being abusive, but they can get abusive. They really can get abusive. And even if it's just abusive, it doesn't feel good. And that's not the relationship I want you building, because that's not a relationship that's going to be able to last the test of time. So, okay, what else?
Well, I think it's really important, and this is kind of what Mary Hannah was talking about, and I just wanted to touch on that as well, is if you are in a relationship where a previous partner or where a partner has had abuse, there are
Mhm.
things that you can do
Yeah.
to help your partner process this. So not only is it being patient, It's reading, it's educating yourself on that
Mm-hmm.
experience. It's
Mm-hmm.
potentially looking at support groups or reading stories online of how that experience was for them
Yeah.
and realizing they are going to be irrevocably changed for the rest of their life
Yeah.
because of this experience,
Yeah.
which means it is going to be more difficult to talk about sex, frankly. It is going to be more difficult to initiate or to feel confident in your body or to feel comfortable in crowded situations if depending on the nature of the assault. Like understanding your friends, the environment that you put your partner in is going to
Mm.
affect how they're feeling. And so not only how you approach things in your relationship, but how
Mhm.
are you being mindful of the environment? How are you being mindful of, oh, this is probably a trigger, or I need to check in. Like I'm working with a couple and he's very frightful of initiating and having sex with his partner
Yeah.
because she's having pain. And she's like, pain's not always the worst thing. We can work through pain. Like I want
Right.
sex.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's figuring out, like, listen to your partner
Yeah.
and figure out that, like, what is your partner wanting and what and even if it feels a little uncomfortable or even if it feels like, well, I don't want to hurt my partner.
Right.
Yeah, but this is consensual. Like
Yeah.
this is not, you're not hurting your
Yeah.
partner. This isn't abuse.
Yeah.
And so kind of figuring out that line as well.
Definitely so. Yeah, I think that's a good one. Talking about pain and sex and making sure y'all are having good conversations. Because I've had plenty of clients who've been like, pain is not a problem. Let's not focus on that. I'm taking one for the team. Like, let's go with that. All right. Who else wanted to say something about abuse, abusiveness in relationships? What?
Yes, I think that Jessica Renard brings up a great point that I have
Mhm.
also seen clients where it's specifically like male-female relationships where the male is like overly worried and concerned about being abusive, which in a way is like, it's so great, right? It's so great that there's that awareness and that desire to make sure that like there's no harm being inflicted.
Mhm.
And also what it looks like to actually listen to your partner and have that conversation and
Yeah.
say, what kind of effect are you actually having on them? Do
Hmm.
they actually feel safe, unsafe? Really having that conversation and
Yeah.
figuring it out, as opposed to having the more like cerebral, wider scope worry if you are an abusive
Hmm.
man, like listening to your partner. Um, Also too, like this isn't strictly abusive, but even just thinking of what you said, Natalie, of like those power struggles and how for some people it's self-imposed almost, where they feel responsible, like I have to give my partner sex, even though their partner hasn't directly communicated that, but they just feel that responsibility, maybe because they grew up in a culture that told them you're responsible for your partner's like sexual happiness. And
Yeah.
even that responsibility can also just be a killer of desire. So even
Hmm.
just putting it out there that if you're experiencing that, like that is totally normal and also something really great to address in couples therapy.
Definitely so. And I think what still shocks me today is how much people don't talk about sex. How many couples don't say, okay, what are you really wanting from me? What are you really wanting from this relationship? What are you really wanting our sex life to be like? Um, and I know a lot of people are like, well, I don't know. I've never thought about that. So taking the time to do that, taking the time to say, this is what I want for us sexually, or I don't know, and I'm gonna read some books or watch some stories or think about it, or let me hear what you think, and maybe I can just go along with that until I develop my own sense of what I want for our sex life. But making sure couples that y'all are having those conversations with each other, please, 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 please. So yeah. Okay, what else in our last 3 minutes? All hearts and minds clear. Okay, then I want to talk about what I want to talk about next week. All right, I have not. Netflix had put out a TV show, How to Build a Sex Room, that I have not watched yet, and I really need to watch it because I've referred two clients to the TV show, and I really shouldn't be referring clients to stuff that I haven't actually watched myself yet. That's not good therapy, y'all. But I heard about it from all my other clinician friends, and I felt like for these particular couples would be really good. So if you, yeah, so I'd like for us to watch it and talk about it next week. So how's that? Yes, Tosh, you don't have Netflix.
No, I have Netflix and
Okay.
definitely gonna watch it. So we can talk
Okay.
about it. You mentioning just content made me remember that I wanted you to watch a Pop the Balloon dating challenges.
I did. You, I think you sent me one.
I watched
You did.
that too. I couldn't get
Yeah.
past like the
And
first
she
4 minutes.
emailed me and was like, "This is awful."
It is.
So I just wanted to engage with y'all about that because there's so many of them that you just get a wide range of perspectives and things.
You
And
did. I just feel like, who are these people? Like, who are these people that say,
where are they coming from?
I don't know where the casting calls are. Like it's like that, and like the 20 women or 20 men versus one. Those are
yeah,
My cousin did that one, Jessica.
really which
My
one she's
cousin in
on?
Memphis, she did it was 10 women versus the stud. My cousin is the stud, and it was just I had to text her and be like, "Cuz,
Oh my
why?"
God.
But
Natalie has to watch that.
she has a large Instagram following.
Oh,
And I
that's why.
think that's where they're finding these people. Like if they're very active on social media, the producers of these shows might be reaching out and saying, "Do you want to participate in this, that, and the third?" So
I mean, if you already got 10,000 followers, of course we could let's have them watch whatever we're gonna produce. So
Hilarious.
yeah. And I really feel like, this is just the golden age of TV. Like anybody can produce anything on any show. There's so many outlets that need content. So yeah, that's it.
everyone
So,
has a
all
platform.
right. So next week we'll talk about how to build a sex room. So I'm excited, and I needed something to force me to watch the show because I'd rather watch like Aliens or something. So not a reality person. All right, ladies, y'all have a wonderful Friday. All right, bye.